Eric's hand was up with a plant question for a while, so I want to go to you, and then I'll do Chris and Molly.
Okay, so we have, I have a group of people here, so we have 2 questions. My question is, I have a pothos plant, I think it's called, and so I was just wondering where does pothos plant fall on the loves water, hates water scale? Like, do I do the 2 inches down for the pothos? Or is he more like the cactus? And then my friend here, Ray, has a question about desert plants.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, I actually had a premonition as I was writing this. Someone was going to say, "What about pothos?" So,
Wow.
and I was going to put a meme in there as like, like pothos everywhere, because it is one of the best. It's one of the estate houseplants. And so yes, actually, it does prefer to dry out to about 1 to 2 inches between waterings, and it is a low light tolerant plant. The lowest light it can handle is about 100 lumens, which is sufficient, as if you had it under a fluorescent light or an LED or an incandescent, it would survive. That is the bare minimum. But if you have a window or something, it would prefer to be in a, say, northwest facing window, because it likes bright filtered light. So yeah, then it really likes to dry out between waterings. Almost all things that are related to it, like philodendron, monstera, and aglaonema, which is the Chinese evergreen, all of those kinds of plants, they really like to dry between waterings. The reason is, ZZ plants also. The reason is because they have very adapted roots that are designed in a way that they have a little bit more water retention, so they store more water in their roots and in their tissues. Therefore, if you overwater them, then they are subject to just completely collapsing because there is cellular damage beyond repair. Same thing applies to desert plants such as cacti, that their roots are very thin and spindly, but they have an amazing capacity to drink. But that does not imply that they want to drink a lot. Instead, what happens is that their cacti especially, their entire bodies are actually about 90% water. And what instead is that they store all their water in their tissues, because they're used to getting, in the wild, right? They're used to receiving about a few inches a year. And in the household, it's important to assimilate a desert environment. So good thing is, in the household, humidity is low, heat is a little higher than usual, and it's a little dry, which is great for cacti. It's important that they stay in a south-facing window at all times. I'm sorry, not a south-facing window. You can pull them back about 4 feet from a south-facing window, or keep them in a west-facing window. They'll be very happy there. And you only water them, I would say, about every 3 to 4 weeks. You want that soil to dry out about completely, almost completely.
Okay. Can my friend Ray ask her question, or do we go to the end of the line now?
The cacti one was, or the desert one was Ray's question, right?
No, what's your question, Ray?
Go ahead.
How can you tell when a plant is suffering from like heat damage and light damage, or do you not really? That's kind of what I was looking for.
Because we get up to 120 around here.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about light damage, tends to look like brown spots. That's too much light. Too much heat will make a plant, all of its sides just crispy. The leaf will be very crispy, and that's because say it's not being taken care of in the right way. That's why, like, in deserts where it gets to say about 120 degrees, like Death Valley, things still survive because they get exactly what they need. So in the household, to provide for that, it's like, also in places where it's hot like that, plants tend to grow in places where they're sheltered from heat. So in the wild, you say you're hiking in Death Valley, right? You'll definitely find cactus, succulents, and a bunch of other forbs. Even water-loving plants like a fern. You can find them in places like underneath boulders, or not underneath boulders, but you know what I'm saying, is that they're in crevices. So, and that's how you protect them from heat, is that you keep them away from a source that is heat. So windows are a tremendous source of heat, because they let in a lot of light and the surface heats up to the same temperature that is the outdoors. So when you have a hot day like that, what I would recommend is pull it back and keep your shades down. It's okay, because they'll have enough energy stored up from how do I say, from the rest of the year, that they were where they were. But if it gets too hot, then I would recommend just like pull it back, and then at night bring it back to the window and pull it back again in the morning, just so that it has a chance to cool off and get a little bit of that morning sun before it gets too hot.
Cool. Thank you. Let's go to Chris, and I just want to flag Renata. I have to go because I have another Zoom call starting in half an hour, so I want to just take a break.
Oh, 2020.
So if you're willing to do the rest of the facilitation, that'd be awesome.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks.
Chris, it's to you.
I guess that's me.
Or Bridget.
I have a question about this plant.
Yeah.
You recognize it?
Yep. Alocasia African shield.
Okay. This is in my lifetime the second type of this plant that I've tried to grow. And I just feel like I always end up with this like one solitary leaf, and then it dies.
Yes.
What am I doing wrong?
That is nothing wrong. It's actually doing what it was meant to do, how evolution told it to grow.
But sometimes it has more than one leaf and it looks better.
That's the thing, is that's when it does that. So alocasias are much like bulbs. They store their energy, and they typically only need one leaf to accomplish that.
Oh.
And they store their energy, and then in the winter time, when it's time to go dormant, it doesn't die. It just shrivels up and goes into dormancy.
Okay.
If you're seeing alocasias, say you're at a nursery or something that has 2 leaves or 3 leaves, or sometimes they'll have multiple bulbs in the pot, so that it appears that it's multiple. It looks like it's one individual that is many.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually just many individuals.
Oh.
Yeah, but alocasias, they also really like to dry out to about 2 inches between water.
Yeah, I've noticed that about it. I try not to water it too often. I used to actually work for a gardener, and so I worked with houseplants a little bit while I was doing it. I feel like the main thing that I learned from that is so many houseplants are housed in containers, but oftentimes, depending on who's planting it, like it'll be housed in a plastic container inside of a ceramic container.
Yeah.
And like the main thing that I took away from that is to always take the plastic container out, water it, let all the water come out, and then put it back in the ceramic container. Because otherwise you have plants that are just sitting in water, which
Yeah.
ends up resulting in the overwatering thing, which you've talked about a lot. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the gold message to take home from watering plants. Don't let them sit in a puddle of water unless
Yeah.
they're
Never
like
let
water
them sit in a
lilies or
puddle.
something.
Unless they like it, and there are only a few, like the ones that not even ferns like it. It's more like just the fishtail palm that can handle sitting in a puddle of water indoors.
Yeah.
And carnivorous plants.
Yeah, and
Yes.
carnivorous plants. I didn't bring them because I didn't bring them up because they're too niche, but
I'm so into them.
they're so great though. They're actually not as finicky as people think.
Hey y'all, I just wanted to say goodbye since there are so many people here that I love and don't get to see very often. So I don't want to interrupt plant time too much. But Bridget and Chris, I love you. Nate, I miss you so much. Jeff, it's so good to see you. And other people, it's lovely to see you again as well. But
Hi, Jake. I see you back there.
Hi.
Miss you, man.
Oh, my heart. I love you guys. Mwah.
Bye, Sonia.
Bye.
Bye.
And thank you for the talks. Thank you, Gabriel.
Mhm.
And thank you, Jeff. And who's our last person? Where did he go? And Nate, of course. All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Nate, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, mine's, I guess, like a two-part question. One is going off of kind of finicky plants. Is there a plant that is like super, like what's the most difficult plant to care for, I guess, in terms of like crazy stuff? And then second is there anything about like the way that people sell plants that you really hate? Like I really hate moonbeam cactuses, but I don't know if you have like you said with the alocasia, they put multiple bulbs in one pot and make it look like it's something that it shouldn't be, instead of kind of letting the plant be itself.
Right. The trickiest plant that I know in existence to grow is got to be what was it called? Calathea. What was it, orbifolia or something? It looks like it looks like there's a net. The veins are golden, and they're very finicky because they're all calatheas, all prayer plants, which are like Calathea, Stramanthe, and Tenanthe. They're and Marantas. They're all extremely sensitive to boron, chlorine, and fluorine being present in the water. And on top of that, they need 75% humidity. And on top of that, they need indirect light at all times of the day, unobstructed indirect light. And what else? Like,
Are
yeah,
they incredibly gorgeous? Why would people do all of that?
yeah, they're extremely gorgeous, those Marantas. And a part of it, and actually is another reason why, so to answer the two-parter, is they're sold for their beauty, but as someone who's worked in a nursery before, where we sold those, I saw firsthand, it's like, yeah, people sell them to get out the door. They never bother to explain all of its nuances, because like I was saying, is like when you have plants, you have to build a relationship with them, and half the time that's just research and observation, and then the other time is that you spend with it is implementation. So but that is never from Jeff. Unobstructed, just quickly, unobstructed light is
Like in the middle of a field.
no, more like in the sense that, how do I say? So it's indirect, meaning that it's being refracted somewhere. So a lot of these houseplants can't handle direct light. That is in like if out in the field, that is direct light. So unobstructed is in the sense that it's all refracted. So let's say you had a plant in a window and you're in your apartment complex. The window is north facing and it is overlooking. It's not, there's nothing in front of that window. It's open. So that would be unobstructed, but all of the light that is coming in from the north facing is refracted because it's indirect, as in it's bouncing off the walls, it's bouncing off the floor and going towards your window. But yeah, that's the thing is like, so I guess I would say Marantas is because they're just, they're sold for their beauty, but no one ever, they're kind of like a lie in a pot. They're sold that way. They're like, oh, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. You know, it's like, just buy it, please.
Thanks.
Kenchi?
Hi. We had a ZZ plant for a couple of years, which started out really cute, and we kind of followed the instructions, and we basically never watered it from, I think, Thanksgiving to St. Patrick's Day was what the guy said. So it was doing fine, but it was growing, and eventually it kind of went from its nice compact form to like kind of like big and like splaying out, and so eventually we just decided to get a new one. We actually kept one of the shoots, one of the branches from the old one, and then just kind of kept it in the pot with the new one. But I guess what I'm wondering is it possible to keep them kind of in their nice compact form, or do they always kind of eventually get big and ungainly?
Yeah, ZZ plants naturally have that tendency. Yet there are ways for it to not do that as much. It'll still happen, but it'll be more compact. The first thing is you got to get it in really bright light. The reason why it will do that in the first place is because it's searching for stronger sources of light. And
makes sense.
So that's another thing, is that ZZ plants are always sold as, oh yeah, you can put them in your bathroom and yada yada. That's a complete lie. They actually need very good lighting throughout the day, and it's true that they never need water in a way that you can water them probably about once a month, completely, like a complete soaking once a month. Or but what I would recommend when it gets ungainly in a couple of years is take what do you call that stuff? You can take twine, you can take there's this plastic kind of like tape that's not sticky. It's just like tape, and you wrap it and tie it, and you keep it that way until you see that the new growth starts to just go up and straight.
Okay.
The other option, if you really want, there's actually a variety that has been genetically modified to stay straight. It's called Samiococcus. What's it called? Micro. Yeah, the variety name is Micro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
It stays very compact.
Nice.
All right, and Molly.
Woohoo! Okay, I'm here. Hi, Gabriel.
Hey.
I already asked you about my fiddle leaf ficus before in the office, but here it is. And I remember you were talking about
when it's not growing at the bottom and just at the top to do some special thing with cutting the leaves. Can you repeat that and how you do that? Because they don't grow down there and they're all just at the top. And I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, I
So.
can see from its positioning in the first place that it's dark at the bottom. So it would only have reason to keep growth on the top because that's where the light is. And but if you're not able to move it, that's okay. It'll still live. So what you want to do is look at the apical meristem, which is on the very top of the plant. You should see new growth. If you don't, if you're able to zoom in, it's a very small portion of the plant, but.
That thing?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I see what the problem is. Okay, this is a two-parter, what you're going to have to do.
Okay.
On the next watering, and until winter shows up, what you're going to want to do is fertilize it. And that's for each watering. You should get water-soluble fertilizer and mix it in. And you might want to write this down because it's like really important about giving ficus care.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Okay. Ficus likes to get a certain balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we call that NPK. And those are the little numbers that are demarcated with hyphens between them on a bag of fertilizer. So generally, a lot of the big house plants like ficus and other things like an NPK of 18, 10, and 8.
Got it.
And then that'll push up new growth.
Mm.
When the new growth occurs, what you should do is you'll see that at the very top of the plant, there's going to be 2 leaves that are in a V.
Uh-huh.
And there you go, there's the V. What you're going to want to do is take your scissors, which are my right hand here, and cut right below the V.
Whoa.
But not like, not when it's like a W, you know what I mean? Like the leaves are pointing out more like a W. You want to do it exactly when it's like a V. Because if you do it at the W, it's going to kind of look janky. So what the V does, if you keep doing that repeatedly, it sends the hormone signal to the plant, produce more leaves below so that I don't get cut at the top.
Okay, so you cut the whole, like, can you describe the cutting process? Like how, like you're cutting a whole leaf off?
No, you cut it from the stem. So there's the right here, where I'm pointing, is the stem.
Okay.
And I think
Sorry.
let me try to demonstrate with one of my plants. I don't have any ficus because I don't have space for them, but I'm gonna try with my what do they call these? Rhaphidophora. So, oh shit, that was nothing. Okay, so here we go. It's kind of hard to see, but do you see this little point coming out? It's sort of like a V, and I would cut, if I wanted to, right there, right above that V on the stem. So you have to cut the stem right below the V, which is the apical meristem, which is where all the new growth is pushed out of.
Oh, it all makes sense. Okay. Wow.
Oh wait, here's a better plant. This one I showed. Okay, this one is like really like a V here.
Oh,
You can kind of see that, right? Like,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
this one's great. I love her.
What's that one?
They're called flame flowers.
Oh, that's fun.
Epicia cupreata.
Super fun too, but the flame one's fun. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Gabriel.
Yep.
I have a diagnosis question also. Bridget, you will recognize this plant. So I have moved this plant around so much to different things to see. It actually seems like it's doing pretty well over here. It's a corner of the house that it's like this. That's a western window. It's pretty warm in here, but it's in this corner where it's a little bit protected from the light. And the edges of the leaves look like that.
Yeah. That browning is strictly from underwatering.
Okay.
And so lighting is good there. How many feet is that from the plant to the window? About 6?
Yeah, maybe a little more than that. But yeah, like 6 or 8. Pretty
Okay.
close.
That's pretty good. Lighting terms. For it to grow evenly, you're going to have to turn it around about until, is there like a bald spot where there are no fronds? Like right there, yeah.
Yeah. So that should be facing out.
That should be pointing out towards the window, and it'll start filling in.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah. Watering, these guys like to dry out to pretty much like 2 to 2.5 inches between watering.
It feels wet right now.
Okay. Yeah, then don't water it at all.
And it's been probably a couple weeks since I've watered it.
Yeah. You could it doesn't hurt to always, you should always trim off dry tips.
Just like the actual, like cut the tip of the leaf?
Yeah, it does no harm to Neanthobellas, which are, I think they're also known as parlor palm. That one right there. But what is the other thing? If you ever see spores, which are these clusters of, they look like calamaris, kind of, but they're yellow.
Oh yes. Like it looks like maybe flower buds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
every now and then I see those.
Yeah, they look like flower buds, but palms, as you might know, aren't flowering plants. They actually produce spores. But for the overall longevity of the plant, it's important that you cut off spores because they zap the energy. It's the plant is saying it's ready for reproduction, and all of its energy goes into reproduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So get rid of those.
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're so far over time, but this is really fun. Kenji, do you want to ask Gabriel? Are you still good to stick around? One last question, Kenji.
Sure. Yeah. So we have a solarium which faces south, so it gets like direct sun, probably like it's a bit sunken down, so it gets direct sunlight, maybe like, I don't know, less than 6 hours a day. But it gets quite hot during all the sunny months of the year. So it's kind of a funny place to try and grow stuff, and I've tried to grow stuff before, and it feels like maybe the extremes of temperature are kind of hard for plants. Do you have any recommendations for a spot like that?
Is south facing, you said?
It's south facing, but it's kind of sunk down because of the way that property is. So it gets maybe like 6 hours of direct sunlight, but it gets like bright indirect sunlight the rest of the day. And it gets, because it's a solarium, it gets pretty hot during all the sunny months of the year. And then it gets probably cooler than the rest of the house in the winter because there's all this glass.
Right.
So
I would say you could probably go with sago palm, and any variety of cacti. Or
okay.
You said past 6 hours, it starts to wean off, right? It gets a little darker.
Well, I mean, there's basically like bright indirect light all day, but then there's also direct light for like probably 5, 6 hours.
Okay. Like very direct though.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, depending on the exact location, but yeah.
Oh, that's tricky if it's very direct. Let's see.
I mean, there's definitely parts of it that are less direct than others, so I could probably pick and choose, but it is a solarium, so a lot of it gets direct sunlight, yeah.
Right. Let me think here. You could also probably go with Hoyas.
Hoyas, okay. I don't know.
Which are very, very fascinating. Trust me, when you get into them, there's no turning back.
How do you spell that?
Hoya.
Okay.
You can also lipstick plants too. Excellent for bright areas.
Okay.
Lipsticks are called Aschenanthus.
Okay.
And yeah, they love bright light. So do Hoyas. So both of those are vining plants, and what they do is that they in the wild grow in the little pouches between the branches of trees and the little crevices, and they hang down. They're vines, but they stay pretty compact because they're not super fast growers. And I have a west facing solarium, but there's a tree in front of it, so it's kind of filtered. But I have a Hoya and a Aschenanthus lipstick plant in there. They are doing fantastic.
Nice.
They're wonderful plants because they also flower, and they're the Hoya is very fragrant when it flowers. So
nice.
That's one. They're related to milkweeds. The Hoyas are.
Huh.
So if you picture a milkweed flower, but it's hanging down, that's what I'm saying is you get into them and then you just keep buying them and you're like, uh-oh.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I recommend those two actually for good starters, because they also, what I'd recommend for potting them is you put them in orchid bark. 1 part orchid bark and 1 part soil, like regular indoor plant soil, and you water them like once a month, and you almost never have to fertilize them either. They're so easy to take care of.
Nice, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Gabriel, you should really consider that prefix. I know it probably is frowned upon, but yeah, plant doctoring. That's great. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really appreciate it.